Hello to everyone out there. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stephanie Baker. I am the Communications Director here with Team Celeste. We're going to take a minute to let a few others join this live stream before we get started. So thank you for your patience. While we're waiting for others to already here with us, go ahead and feel free to leave some questions in the comment area. And we will do our very best to get to as many questions as possible. And if we don't get to your question tonight, don't worry, we'll have another virtual town hall on May 6th, and we'll address your questions at that time. So thanks for your patience, and we'll get started soon. We're here with Team Celeste. So we're going to wait just a few more seconds for some others to join. I'll be monitoring the comments, so I will make sure we get to as many questions as possible. And in just a moment, Celeste will introduce herself and we'll get going. Okay, Celeste, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, thank you everybody for being here and joining us on this Facebook Live, and happy Earth Day to everybody. I'm Celeste Williams. I am a family nurse practitioner and the Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress here in Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District. I am running for Congress because I do not think that anyone should go broke just because they get sick. We need to make sure that we have a world-class education system, and we need to make sure that workers in America are paid a fair wage. And so those are really my 3 issues that are really important to me, and what I will be fighting for in Washington. So I'd like to kind of start off the evening with a quote that I came across today, and that was from Rachel Carson, and she said, "In nature, nothing exists alone." And I think that's very true of certainly human beings and anything within our world, and in fact in politics as well. Everything is interrelated. So I will let us get started here with some questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Steph.
Well, before we jump into questions, I wanted to ask your thoughts on a recent event that happened. Many people have probably noticed, especially if you live around Washington County, recently the suspension of 287G. And I wanted to know your thoughts about that, Celeste.
Well, I think there's no surprise there that this is something that I've advocated for. We've called for an end to 287G. And so I'm quite pleased to see that Washington County has gotten out of that. And I certainly would like to see Benton County also stop participating in the 287G program.
Great. Our first question that was pre-submitted prior to starting comes from the chair of the Young Republicans of Northwest Arkansas. And he's asking us, he says he's been approached by several young conservative Republicans who are concerned about climate change. He wants to know, what are some ways that you can work with Republicans on the issue of climate change in a bipartisan way?
Absolutely. So I think that I think that climate change is not a partisan issue. I think back to President Bush, like to say that he was an environmentalist. And so certainly we can work together on some climate change or climate legislation. I'd like to see a revenue neutral carbon tax. I would and that's certainly not partisan. And then also I think that you can look at climate change as an opportunity for economic investment, and certainly jobs in green energy to have a more sustainable energy would be great. I think no one, Republican or Democrat, is opposed to having good paying jobs.
Another question that was submitted says, both of your opponents in this congressional race, Womack and Kalagius, are unsure of whether climate change is a man-made problem. As the only candidate in Congress in Arkansas's 3rd District who is a professional in a scientific field, what is the best way to discuss climate issues with people that don't already believe that the problem is man-made and needs to be solved? We had another question that was similar, that was basically asking, in the midst of this pandemic with folks who are science deniers, how do you reach out to those folks?
So I think, it goes back to all politics is local. And so we need to be looking at how climate change is affecting local communities. As an example, I think the recent flooding along the Arkansas River in the Fort Smith area, that's certainly a result of increase or more extreme weather. And so we will continue to see more flooding and more droughts if we do not work together. And I think it is important to remember, human beings created these problems, that human beings are going to have to come together to solve them. And I think, as far as just messaging, it's just a scientific fact, and we need to move past debating that and just look for solutions.
Do you believe that efforts to improve the environment and economy are either or decisions, or that there are some both and opportunities that can improve both the environment and the economy?
So I think that if you want to have a healthy economy, you need to also have a healthy environment. And so there are certainly lots of opportunities to invest in green type jobs. Certainly we need to stop subsidizing the oil and natural gas industry and move towards green renewable energy. And that also is a great economic opportunity for rural areas. I think we need to also be very cognizant of not leaving communities behind, and certainly rural communities tend to get left out. And there are a lot of opportunities to have solar and wind in more rural areas, which is also a great way to bring good paying jobs to those areas as well.
Another question that came through is actually more of a comment. Someone from Rogers comments that they checked Representative Womack's issues section on his website, and there's not even a category for environment.
Yeah, so I think that is certainly an issue that doesn't seem to be on his radar. And if he were concerned about it, he would have that that information available and would be working to pass legislation that would address that issue.
Okay, another question that came through is, how do you think young people can play a role in ensuring that the catastrophic consequences of climate change are mitigated?
So I've mentioned the revenue neutral carbon tax and dividends back to U.S. citizens after you have a carbon tax towards wealthier companies. And so that's one solution. I think we also need to think about not just the use of energy, but being more energy efficient, making sure that we use less energy. It's sort of the reduce, reuse, recycle scenario. And then just as how do we get our youth to pay attention to these issues, is just talking to them about it. Today I took time out with my kids that we watched a short little video about actually sea lions, and talked about how climate change is affecting them. And then I had them all trace their foot on a piece of paper and sort of a metaphorical carbon footprint, and come up with things that they as individuals could do to reduce their carbon footprint. And so, some of their solutions were making sure they turn the light out. One of them suggested eating less meat, so they kind of came up with different solutions themselves. And I think, we as adults can all do that as well. And, of course, that's as individuals, but collectively, we need to have policy that really makes sure that we are on a more energy efficient and more sustainable path.
Another question comes from someone in Bentonville. They say that they've noticed that Representative Womack has taken $123,500 in campaign contributions from oil and gas companies, including $20,500 from ExxonMobil. What do you think that tells us about his commitment to protecting the environment?
So I think that where your treasure lies, there also lies your heart. And so I think that, being a grassroots funded campaign, that's who we represent, are the people who are contributing to this campaign, individuals generally within the district. And so those are the people that I'm fighting for. And I think that when you are taking money from large special interest groups, that is who you're beholden to. You owe those people. And so I think that it just tells a lot about who someone is really representing.
Another question asks, do your congressional efforts align with the current presidential administration to undermine the science that supports climate change research? And will you encourage federal or state agencies to restore scientific data about climate change to their websites in order to help educate citizens if elected?
So I believe in science. I think that we can only make decisions as well as we make better decisions if we have reliable and sound data to make those decisions on. And so, no, I do not think that my views align with the current administration, who, by the way, today suggested that we may need to help provide some financial relief to the oil and natural gas industry right now. So, no.
I'm going to take a quick moment before I ask some more of these pre-submitted questions to remind all of the folks watching that if you have a question, you can ask it in the comments here and we'll try to get to it. Okay, Celeste, this question is changing gears a bit. Do you think that the CARES Act did enough for individuals and small businesses that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
So my short answer is no. I certainly was glad to see an initial investment in everyday people and small businesses. That obviously wasn't enough, and certainly this problem is not something that's going to go away overnight. So I think that moving forward, we need to really put the needs of the everyday American first. And so a lot of people are not able to work right now. And so I think that it is really important to make sure that we're investing in a good safety net so that everyday people do not lose their homes or their cars, and they can put food on the table and make sure that their children are well cared for and fed. And then I think, a little as an aside, I think moving forward, we have to make sure that we have adequate testing and testing supplies. And so a lot of the hold up with testing has been not having enough of a specific swab, and then not having enough of the test medium that is required to run the test in. And that seems to be a huge problem because states and hospitals are all bidding against one another to try to get these supplies. And I think this is another example where the federal government needs to be leading the way and making sure that we have a clear plan of how do we get these things and how do we make sure that the people who need them, the healthcare providers, have access to testing supplies to be able to adequately test, trace, and manage this pandemic. And beyond that, I think then certainly we need to be moving towards getting a vaccine so that we can prevent the spread of this virus. Right now, our only way to prevent is self-quarantining, staying at home, and able to prevent the spread. And if we get a vaccine, then we certainly are able to more proactively prevent. And I do want to caution people, historically, the quickest we've ever developed a vaccine was I believe was the mumps vaccine. And that took 4 years for us to get that vaccine. And one of the other problems that this pandemic has highlighted within our country is that we don't have, so let's say that we are looking at 18 months at the absolute fastest that we're going to get this vaccine available. We don't have facilities in this country to manufacture the number of vaccines that we need. And so again, I think this is an opportunity to invest in our local economies here, and we need to be building the facilities to ramp up production of vaccines so that we can get American citizens a vaccine to prevent the spread of this virus and save lives.
Okay, another question that was pre-submitted asks, do you think the fact that Steve Womack has taken $74,500 in campaign contributions from insurance companies might be why he voted 54 times against healthcare insurance reforms?
Yeah, I don't want to put too many words in his mouth, but I certainly think that looking at the evidence available, he is not fighting for everyday Arkansans. And again, we need to make sure that we have policy that puts everyday average citizens center so that we make sure that we are creating more economic and just better economic opportunities for everyday people, and so that people can get the health care they need when they need it, and nobody should have to go broke just because they get sick.
Okay, we have another question coming in from the comment section. What progressive values and policy goals that are part of this COVID response do you think will become a more permanent part of our policies and culture, if any?
So I think that a lot of the changes that we see now may be around to stay. Less of a policy, sort of a policy issue. I think about just healthcare. I think that telemedicine is certainly here to stay. That is a way that makes it easier for people to get care from wherever they are. I think it will be really beneficial for rural communities, especially if we also invest in broadband so that they can actually have access to telemedicine as well. I think that it certainly is a time that, again, highlights the weaknesses that we have in our society. Certainly, we do not have a strong social safety net. I think it's over 65,000 people have filed for unemployment here in the state. And it is really important that we make sure that in the event of something terrible like this happening again, that that the financial crisis of this isn't made worse by thousands of people losing their homes. That just creates more and more economic instability. And so, this isn't going to last forever. It's not going to go away overnight, but we need to find a way that we can really support the people in our community to get to a point where they can be out and be independent and financially stable again. I also think about, just again, this highlights weaknesses in our community. I think of children that are in my kids' school district. My kids go to Pea Ridge. And there are a lot of kids there that I shouldn't say a lot, but there are a number of kids there that do not have internet access in the home where they live. And so those kids are not getting the same educational plans that everybody else is. And then the teachers have to create an additional packet for those kids to complete. And a lot of times, you have to be real careful. You can't print out a packet that says, click on this link, because they don't have that link. So it's really sort of creating a separate educational system for kids when they have that much inequality.
Another comment just is thanking you for supporting the Vote by Mail initiative. We do have a petition that folks can sign if they want to show their support for that on our Facebook page. Celeste, do you want to speak for a moment about the importance of vote by mail and no excuse absentee voting, especially in light of this pandemic?
Sure. So I think that certainly, we do not anticipate that we will always have a public health crisis that makes it difficult for people to get out and vote. But looking at it, it does address a lot of barriers that people have for being able to get to the ballot box, whether it is a work schedule that makes it difficult for you to get there, having difficulties with transportation. And vote by mail is a secure way to let your voice be heard. And I certainly think that we need to make sure that we are strengthening our democracy right now.
Okay. Another question is asking if you can speak to the political retaliation that healthcare professionals are facing these days. It's affecting hospital workers, medical policy experts, and do you find this upsetting?
Well, I will first say that I personally myself have not seen any political retaliation in our communities locally. I do think that nurses, doctors, all healthcare workers, respiratory therapists, not to leave anybody out, but they are there to do what is right for the person in front of them. They are there to serve their communities. And that is not a political or partisan job. And so I don't understand the making it political kind of rhetoric. Like, people are just doing their jobs. People who work in healthcare just want to make sure that you and people in their community are safe and healthy.
We had another question, switching gears again. This month is National Volunteer Month. I think this week is actually National Volunteer Week. This question is asking if you know if the state's doing anything to honor volunteers this month. I'm not aware of that. I do know that we are grateful for our volunteers, and we'll be posting a thank you post for them on Friday. Do you know of anything going on in the state, any proclamations or anything, Celeste?
Not that I'm aware of. I will also just admit that has not been on my first of thought. More just focused on, I think, like everybody else, trying to get to work and raise my kids at home in the middle of a quarantine. So yeah, really appreciate volunteers. You're wonderful.
Speaking of volunteering, if there are folks who are interested in volunteering, we have launched our live phone banking. So if you would like to volunteer, go ahead and send a private message to the page or go to our website, Celeste Williams for Arkansas. And and it's scrolling along the bottom of the page there too. You can see it, celestewilliamsforarkansas.com. And you can sign up as a volunteer and we'll get you hooked up with phone banking, which is something you can do from your home safely during this pandemic. All right, I have another question that has come through, which is kind of in the same vein as volunteering. This question comes from Pulaski County, actually, and you can volunteer from anywhere in the state for the Celeste campaign. This question says, very specific, there are 195 days until the election. What do your supporters need to do between now and then to help you flip the third?
So what do we need to do between now and then? Any organization that is interested in registering voters, that is what they need to be doing right now. So we need to register as many voters as possible. We need to make sure that our friends and family close to us are registered and planning to vote. And then we need to make sure that they know that I'm running for office and that I'm a wonderful human being and that they should vote for me. And so we can all work to get the message out. The super easy thing that people can do is like us on social media and share our message. And then beyond just social media kind of things are volunteering to do some phone banking. I don't know if it's going to be safe to do door knocking anytime in the near future. So we're going to just plan on not doing that until we know for sure that it's safe. So right now you can volunteer, you can phone bank, you can write letters to the editor. And certainly I would always appreciate a financial contribution, since we are a grassroots funded campaign and we are not taking any special interest PAC money or any corporate PAC money. So that certainly helps us get the message out, and we can then get our message out on digital advertising, as well as mailers and signs and t-shirts and all of those kind of things. That all takes money. And so, and also I have wonderful staff members. So if you want to chip extra because they're so amazing, it would be nice to be able to pay everybody what they're worth. I don't know that there's that much money.
Okay, we have one last question before we say goodnight for tonight. And I'll remind everyone that our next virtual town hall will be at the same time, 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on May 6th, which happens to be National Nurses Day. So be sure to tune in for that one as well. So this last question is speaking to the fact that generally elected officials and leaders play a role in showing great empathy to their constituents. So what would you say to all of the residents in Arkansas and in the 3rd who are struggling right now, whether it's because of health or economics or being stuck at home because of this quarantine? What is your message to those folks?
Goodness, that's really putting me on the spot. So I think that it is really important for all of us right now to do our part to help one another. And I think that right now in this time of isolation and quarantine, I think that it's really, first I want to say to those of you who are out there, I know that this is really hard. Most of us did not think that we would be homeschooling our kids and trying to figure out what to do if our spouse lost their job. All of those kind of things are really, really hard and overwhelming. And then we have the added burden of being separated from our loved ones, and that makes it even harder. So what I would ask is that we can all reach out. And so make sure that you're checking on friends and loved ones, especially if you think of older people who are living maybe in an assisted living or in a retirement community. They're even more isolated because they can't go in or out because their risk is so high. And so I would say make sure that you call, FaceTime with those people, make sure that you're reaching out to others. And then, nationally, we do need to have compassionate leadership and, just acknowledging the truth that people live in and then working really hard to make it better is important. And sometimes the answer is, I can't make it better, but I'm sorry you're going through this, and just give people honest information so that they can do what's best for them and their families.
Thank you, Celeste. That is the last of the questions for tonight. So I'll let you go ahead and close and remind everyone again to check out the website and make sure you like Celeste on all of the social media platforms.
Thank you all. I really appreciate you joining with us tonight. And again, you can like and share us, and you can also share just this live stream event as well. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Wash your hands, social distance, check on your neighbors.